See, counting up. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Sustainiacs. I'm Michael Vincent, and my new friend is also Michael Williamson, and he's a Sustainiac. And he's also he's president of a company called Cascadia Seaweed, which is, you know, if you're like me, my daughters love seaweed snacks, right? I love to cook Asian food. I go down this Asian market and they buy all kinds of different seaweed snacks and stuff like that. But I don't think that's quite what Cascadia is. But anyways, it's Canadian seaweed. So I don't know if that's different or not. But anyways, welcome to the show, Michael. How are you, brother?
Great, Michael. Thanks very much. And very interesting to hear the term Sustainiacs. I don't know that I'll use that in my marketing material, but it's certainly heading down the right highway.
Yeah. Well, it's the guitars behind me and everything, right? There's, you need a good guitar with good sustain to hold those notes and that type of stuff. And so it's kind of, look, sustainable. I'm into sustainability, the podcast, and I love music. So let's go with Sustainiacs, right?
And I've got to announce that it's not just Canadian seaweed. We are also incorporated in the U.S. and have a business license in Alaska. So we are British Columbia and Alaskan seaweed. So we scrub up as a good North American company providing regenerative products to the agriculture sector.
That is fantastic, brother. So what is Cascadia seaweed? Am I going to buy this and then use it as a sushi wrap or, in my miso soup, or what am I using this seaweed? What is Cascadia seaweed?
Good question. So globally, there's about 11,000 species of seaweed. So people think of them as a plant. It's actually an algae, and our seaweed is the 11,000 species grow in the ocean. So they're like salt water, divided into reds, browns, and greens, and then below that are various different classes. The seaweed that you eat on your sushi is called nori. It's grown mainly in Japan. There's a little bit of it in North America. And it's a market we're not in. We were in food. The business has been around about 6 years. We were in food for a short while, but we decided there's a better way to make an impact on the planet, positive impact, and a better way to make a positive impact on climate change as an agriculture product. So we don't do food for humans. Cascadia Seaweed's been around 6 years. We build farms in the ocean. Think 1 to 4 to 8 acres of rope and floats, and we plant seed on the ropes in November, and over the winter, Mother Nature does her thing, and then we harvest it in March. We use boats and fishermen and people with experience on the water. All of our farms obviously are off the coast of British Columbia and Alaska. We work with native indigenous communities and local communities to participate in the seaweed industry. I'm going to keep my answer short because we could go for hours and hours and hours just on talking how seaweed is cultivated. But I'd like to leave the point that as seaweed grows in the ocean, it's great benefits for the ocean, uptakes excess nutrients, provides oxygen, provides habitat. And then what we do with it, which we'll talk about shortly, is turn it into products that help farmers have a more positive impact on the soil in which they grow. But more importantly, they get better, bigger, and healthier plants.
That is fantastic. And I think all those, the whole thing, the whole way around the circle of everything you just said, or the whole, acreage of what you just spoke about, all of it is very, very interesting. And all of it lends towards the sustainability, the Sustainiacs type of mission, because you're talking about social impacts. You're talking about the growth impact of where you're actually farming it from and the impacts in that environment, but also what then it is used for. And it is truly completely circular and beautiful. Is there not enough to just harvest natural grown, or do you just say, you know what, we're not even going to go down that road. We're just going to farm our own and not even get into that?
So we use the term sustainable aquaculture supporting regenerative agriculture. So about 95% of the world's seaweed comes from the East, countries like Indonesia, India, Japan, Korea. That's where a lot of the world's seaweed comes from. In the last 10 years, part of the blue economy, the Western world, Europe, Canada, United States, has been cultivating seaweed. Yes, Mother Nature grows a lot of natural seaweed, and there are companies that wild harvest the stock that Mother Nature provides and do that into products. Mother Nature's growing a little bit less of it because of climate change and other impacts on the ocean. And social license is putting downward pressure on folks that wild harvest. It is a resource, and by and large, it's done well, and science says that they're not harming it. But what's one man's resource is another person's bio zone, and that is to say that seaweed on the beach or seaweed wild growing is in fact an environment in which plants and critters live. And when you take it away, there's a bit of downward pressure. By cultivating seaweed, we create net new biomass. So we, let's say, plant 4 hectares and take off 100 tons. We're also leaving seaweed in the ocean that then helps the regeneration. And any seaweed cultivation in Alaska or British Columbia is highly regulated by provincial and state authorities to ensure that the seaweed we plant is native to that area. So we only collect seed for next year's planting within 30 miles of the farm or 50 kilometers of the farm location, so that the seaweed we put in the ocean to grow is what's there already. We're just putting more in it. And I don't want to leave a negative taste on wild harvesters. There's lots of small cottage industries that are very responsible, and they ensure that what they harvest ensures that Mother Nature has enough to continue to grow. In North America, we're fortunate in that there's not widespread wild harvest damaging kelp beds or things like that. Other parts of the world, much less well regulated, and I can't really speak on the damage. But in North America, there are wild harvesters, some big companies, they're responsible. But our business thesis is that cultivating it is better. And what's more, we can scale to meet any demand because within reason, more kelp farms is a good thing for the ocean.
So and that's very interesting. And thank you for that. I have a ton of questions on that anyways. I mean, there's, like you said, there are hours and hours that we could discuss on this, but I speak to people, and there's, I had a person on the show, a year and a half ago, and she was an advocate for seagrass. That's not seaweed, but the impacts of lost seaweed. What are the? Is seaweed it's an algae, so does it carbon capture, or is this process actually helping with carbon capture as well, or is it purely oxygen production and nutrients and that type of stuff?
So somebody said that every second breath we take is provided by oxygen from things that grow in the ocean, seaweed. So seaweed oxygenates the water. It uses photosynthesis, and if you remember your photosynthesis cycle from land plants, takes in carbon, gives off oxygen. So seaweed, in fact, does that. It carbon captures. Seaweed by dry weight or wet weight is about 20%. So it doesn't capture a tremendous amount. But the problem with carbon capture or carbon sequestration is, while it will take in carbon, how much is it taking in, and for how long is it taking it in? If it grows and then gets washed to the deep ocean, the deep abysmal plains, then it'll be sequestered for a long time. If you harvest it and immediately eat it, and then it goes into your bodily function cycle, you've only sequestered it for a short time. But there's 2 other aspects that Cascadia seaweed focuses on. One is that the product we make for it is called a biostimulant, and it can replace synthetic fertilizers at about the 15 to 20% point. So a farmer that normally used 1,000 pounds of nitrogen can use 800 pounds of nitrogen and use biostimulant for the rest. And biostimulants help plants grow better, help plants use whatever nutrition is there, and also give it better response to the stress of drought. So it's a green way of reducing nitrogen use. That in and of itself helps the climate emergency. The other thing is we use it in bovine feed, which can provide better gut health for cows and perhaps reduce methane from burps and replace the need for more land area to grow feed for cows. So seaweed provides a number of very beneficial outcomes for large ag, and that's the market in which we are primarily working. Seaweed for food, as I said earlier, mainly comes from Asia. There's a couple companies in North America using seaweed for human food, and by and large, it's the same species that we're using. We've just chosen to address agriculture rather than human consumption. And the final point I'll say is there's lots of research now going on for bioplastics from seaweed, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, packaging. That's great. It's just not the areas that we're focused on at Cascadia Seaweed.
That's really interesting. There's so many uses for that seaweed and growing it. And one of the things that you said there was really interesting to me, because as we, the world population grows, and the more we want to use, biomass for different things, meaning producing it more and more, we're taking away land and resources for food, et cetera, right? And different things. So this, by farming in the sea, relieves part of that.
It does. Right? It does. And we're not going to make new products. As North Americans, we consume a lot of stuff. We don't need more stuff. We need better versions of the stuff we have. And
redesigned stuff, yeah.
And seaweed across the board can generally replace petroleum-based products. So if the plastic comes from chemicals, you can use seaweed. If pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals come from chemicals, seaweed replaces that. If fertilizer and crop input comes from synthetic chemicals, seaweed can replace that. So what seaweed does across the board is takes a really good biological, bio-based green input and replaces something that's not as nice. And the key is, as an industry builder, is to do it with a better value proposition for the consumer or buyer at a lower price.
Yeah, that's absolutely key, right? Because I mean, you've seen the studies. People will spend more for this or more for that, but then when it comes down to it, they don't. By and large,
yes, there is no green lift. It's great in theory. It's nice to talk about it, but at the end of the day, price dictates it. And in the biostimulant market, we've sold hundreds of thousands of dollars of product in California. We can do it at a slightly lower price for a better product
than the synthetic.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And the impacts on the environment are better, right? I mean, because
100%. One of the things about seaweed biostimulants in the soil is a lot of the soil in farming is dead. We've piled so many chemicals into it and tilled the heck out of it. The soil's dead. It's just a dead medium. Biostimulants help the soil come back to life and increase the paths between the fertilizer and that is in the soil into the plant. And seaweed is a natural product. And live soil also draws down more carbon. So it's a really good holistic cycle. It's not the be all end all. Anybody that comes and promises the holy grail of solutions is probably overselling it a bit. But seaweed is a really good product, and we're going to see over the next 10, 20 years much more of it in our diets and in our food. And there's companies making fabrics with it. It's not going to replace everything, but every little bit helps. As you know, you've done lots of sustainability podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. A step forward is what we need. If you wait till perfection, you're going to wait way too long. We don't need perfection. We need steps forward.
I have a saying in the company that perfection is the enemy of good enough.
You're absolutely right. I've never heard that before, but that's a great way of putting it. So when you're the extraction and the growth of the seaweed, right? So you actually kind of described the question that was formulating in my mind and also created a ton more questions, but I'll go this way. When you talk about dead soil, right? Because you grow your dead soil. What about the seaweed farms? Is it because it's in the water that the nutrients naturally replenish from all over the world and there's this kind of connection? Your little seaweed farm off the coast of Anchorage is going to be, is being replenished by ocean currents that come from everywhere, and therefore you don't have to like crop rotate or anything like that. You understand my question? Are
Yeah,
you? We're not
yeah.
depleting anything, right?
And the simple answer is yes. So our farms look like land farms, except instead of dirt rows, we have rope rows. So
Right.
imagine 300 feet long rows, 6 feet apart. I'm converting from meters to feet here. 6 feet below the ocean, and in pre-harvest time, you'll see rows and rows of green, beautiful products. Over the winter, they've been nourished by two things: the sun and the ocean. And the ocean, of course, is full of nutrients. So when we pick a farm site, we ensure that it's in the right depth of water, that we're not going to block shipping, that we're not going to put the anchors for our farms on protected reefs or special habitat for things that dwell on the ocean bottom, and that we're in an area where there's good ocean flows. We don't want to be near freshwater rivers because freshwater is not good for seaweed. So we make these selections. And you're absolutely correct. If I said if Cascadia and other companies built themselves into $1 billion industry, all of the farms are probably still going to occupy less than 1% of the coastline. So it really is a low impact thing on the ocean. Now, it's important that you take many, many steps, though. It's well regulated by the states and by the provinces. And we do look at all the impacts that it could have on the surrounding areas. We use low impact ropes, so there's not a lot of microplastics. And Mother Nature does the rest. So we're not taking away nutrients that would go otherwise elsewhere. And in fact, we've done scientific studies. We have a lot of smart PhDs on the team that study, and it's net positive after than it is before. So that is to say, we can go into a dead cove, put in a seaweed farm, and in a couple of years, it's attracted back all the positive biological activity that
Oh,
was
wow.
previously there. It's
Yeah.
regenerating the ocean, actually.
So is this? I mean, you hear about the dead zones that occur from deep water drilling, et cetera, and deep water mining and that type of stuff. Is this a possible win-win
Yeah,
solution for those zones?
there's some the First Nations we're working with that are looking to rehabilitate some of their dead coves from logging. Like decades of logging have just scraped the bottom and killed everything that's there. So that practice in seaweed is called reforestation. You go into an area that previously supported something like giant kelp and put an acre of little baby giant kelps back, and you're helping Mother Nature get a kickstart to regenerate itself. And that's a very important industry. And it's a sideline of what we do and some others under the reforestation category.
Reforestation underwater. That is fantastic stuff. So that's very, very interesting. Now, on the land side of this, could is this? Am I thinking about this right? This is very similar to the positive impacts of composting biowaste from the food industry and consumers, or no?
It's similar in outcome and different in methodology. So using food waste and things like that and compost, it's doing a couple of things. It's making the soil more loose and aerated. There are some positive biological elements coming out of food waste that may have nutrients into the soil. So same outcome, you're making the soil better and you're providing more food for the plants. Biostimulants have a very positive outcome, but a different mode of action. Biostimulants are working at the molecular level, working on the rhizosphere, the root systems of the plants, working on stomata and cell openings on leaves. So they work well together.
I see. I see. I was looking at it from other aspects as well. As when you start to put in the composting, et cetera, and you mix it into the soil, like you would be using of this, it actually helps with water retention, so water conservation, et cetera, that type of stuff. Because the soil, when it's dead, does not retain anything, right?
That's
It
right.
just
Yeah,
flows right out.
and we need all solutions. I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago to be in California, where I saw 2,000-acre farms with jalapeno peppers and dates and lemons as far as the eye could see in all direction. what was heartening is these big growers, and we're not industrial level, but we're big company level. All the growers, all their crop scientists, they want to get more out of the soil by putting less into it. They don't want to pound a lot of synthetic stuff into the soil. They want to find more from less. And that's where our products, the biostimulants, can help it. And that's where a good composting or no-till or cover crop program could also benefit. It's under the broad category of regenerative farming, and it's a buzzword that's becoming mainstream. More farmers, growers, and I'm not talking about a single farmer with 100 hectares and one tractor. We're talking about big farms that's feeding America. They all want to get more by doing less.
Yeah, corporate farms specifically as well. Yeah. Does it increase production and yield of the crop as well?
Yeah, 10 to 15 to 20%, depending on the type of crop, the type of soil. There's a lot of variabilities, as you know. There's salty soil, loamy soil, sandy soil, humid soil.
Yeah, but by and large, it helps with the efficiency of that farm and the growth.
Absolutely. 5, 10, 15, 20%. And a lot of it depends on when it was applied. You can apply it when you're first in furrow, when you're seeding. You can do it when it's first leafing, the flowering stage, the fruiting stage. Different types of biostimulants have different types of applicability. And don't forget, farmers are putting a lot of inputs into the crops: pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers.
Does it help reduce the need for those type of things as well, or is that's a different type of?
Yeah, I would say different. I wouldn't make claims that aren't backed by science. Cascadia.
Yeah, there's other good things to reduce that.
There's things like biopesticides. There's companies that reduce the pests by mimicking Mother Nature in a friendly biological way. Biostimulants don't do everything. We're really on the make the plant grow bigger with less. With less.
Yeah, absolutely. How is this applied in the farm? Are you producing it into a liquid? Yep. Is that what it is, or is it powder?
Our product's liquid. And I like to say it's liquid to liquid to liquid to liquid. So when the seaweed grows in the ocean, it's very liquid. We harvest it wet. We store it wet. We process it wet. We ship it wet, and the farmer uses it wet. Being located in British Columbia and Alaska, it's easy to get the product to market down the I-5 or the rail to Chicago. So we have a great corporate advantage being in a U.S.-Canadian company, growing the seaweed here, using the seaweed here for our local farmers. And it reduces the supply chain. Some of the seaweed products come from South Africa, South America, Europe. There's a lot of distance, and we have an advantage. The products are okay, but we have the advantage of being local as well.
Yeah. Does it? You mentioned this as a feed for cattle as well. Is that a development, or you're currently that one of the commercial products?
We're doing studies, so it's in development. In Canada, it's approved as a mineral feed supplement. About 2% of a cow's daily diet, like a feedlot cow or a dairy cow. There's studies that show a tendency to improve the gut health of the cow, and also a tendency to reduction of methane. We can't make claims because we're still doing the science behind it, but a mineral supplement, it's not unlike what you add to your oatmeal in the morning, some healthy grains and some healthy products. It's the same sort of thing. So we're doing real research on that. Everything we do is backed by science. So we have real research going on and seeing the specific efficacy of different species of seaweed applied in different manners with cows.
Wow. And usually, how is it so efficient? I mean, like you said, you can do this at a cheaper and more effective cost than, I'll just call it traditional, right? The synthetics and stuff like that. The existing more than traditional, I guess. Because traditional, it depends on how far back you go to call it something traditional, I guess, right? But the current methods are the most accepted methods. How is it? Because it seemed like it would be a pretty expensive proposition to be able to harvest offshore and bring it in, rather than just throw some chemicals.
Sure. So fertilizers are important. Crops need fertilizers. That's the specific food that helps plants grow. And we're talking big ag here because, what we do in our home gardens is a little bit different. And fertilizer profile generally comes under NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And your bag of lawn food will have 3 numbers like 10-2-6. And that helps growers know the chemical composition. Plants will always need food. And whether it's synthetic or natural fertilizer, they need food. So we're not replacing that. We're reducing the amount of that they need to do. And fortunately, we can sell. So if it was 100% synthetic fertilizers and it cost X, we can get the farmer to reduce the amount he needs by about 20%, replace it with biostimulants at the same price point. So it's cost neutral to the farmer, but it has more benefits because of the things like response to drought and response to more salinity in the soil. It's not all seaweeds, it's not all crops, it's not all jurisdictions, but we specifically market research in areas where seaweed-based biostimulants are beneficial to plants. And I've just got to put in a plug for biostimulants globally. $3 billion a year industry. In the US, it's a $1 billion a year industry. And of all the types of biostimulants, there's probably 700 types or more, 1/3 of them are seaweed. So for the last 40 years, 50 years, seaweed has been recognized as an important input to raising crops. How does it work? I use a simple little metric. Land plants have been around about 700 million years. Seaweed has been around about 1.3 billion years. So it's just evolved over time under a wide variety of conditions to have more beneficial bioactive components.
Yeah, if it has survived that long, it must be a very efficient and very valuable material plant.
Right. And I knew you were going to say that, Michael, and I was ready to spring on you. It's not a plant. It's an algae. Now, we understand that it looks like a plant. It's got something that looks like a root system and something that looks like a stem and things that look like leaves. The root system is only a holdfast to keep it in place in the ocean. The thing that looks like a trunk is, again, a mechanical means to hold it in place. And all the magic happens in the leaves, which are called fronds. So it's where, in the fronds is where the photosynthesis takes place and all the exchange of nutrients takes place in the fronds. I sometimes call it a plant for the newly initiated. It's a plant, but in the great science taxonomy, it's known as an algae.
There you go. Okay. I've been schooled, and I mean it's interesting because that's what it's like. You call tomatoes and vegetables are actually a fruit and stuff like that, right? I mean it's kind of, but you're right. When you look at it, it looks like it's a plant. When you look at it in a book, it looks like it is a plant.
So I heard I'm only smiling, and I'll raise this because of your podcast. Somebody talked about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that tomatoes are fruit. Wisdom is knowing you don't put it in a fruit salad.
Now that's good too. I love that. That's excellent. I like that. So when you're talking about putting this into you say, you can drop it's cost neutral to the farmer to utilize this. So it is a drop-in solution. They don't have to do different. They can apply it the same way they're applying their nutrients, et cetera, right now, right?
Growers want 3 things. They want a return on investment. So if they're going to spend $100 on a biostimulant, they better get more than $100 out. They want to reduce their risk. You and me theoretically get a paycheck every 52 weeks. Farmer gets a paycheck once a year at harvest time. So they don't want risk. And the third thing they want is ease of adaptability. If they have a fertilizing and a planting regime that has a certain set of equipment, and someone comes along and says, "Oh, I got this great product, but you got to shoot it out your tires and only."
You can't do that. Yeah.
It's got to fit in. So, and it's fit in. And as I say, in the States, it's $1 billion a year industry. Yeah. So it's mainstream.
Yeah, that's the question: is does it fit? Because that's the hard part of the adoption. Is if it doesn't, it ain't happening. And
Absolutely.
that's across a lot of manufacturing. And part of the problems with sustainability or using, like you say, not creating more products, but creating different or better designed products, is that crossover from what we're doing now to the better way of doing things.
Yep.
That conversion, that cost, that capital cost is very difficult to overcome in many cases. And so you've got to design something where that capital cost is minimal at most.
Yep.
And if you can
Absolutely.
reduce it, that's even better.
And this is also I want to just dwell for a second on the team at Cascadia Seaweed. We have 20 team members. I'm the oldest. We have lots of folks in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s, and wide experience, PhDs, engineers, accountants, people that love working on the water. They're all doing this, of course, to have a job and feed their families, but they like the mission. And I mentioned
Yeah.
sustainable aquaculture, supporting regenerative agriculture. They're out working with our community partners, First Nations and coastal communities in BC, and Indigenous tribes in Alaska, and coastal communities. So, first of all, they like the economic diversification that we're providing to these communities. They like the fact that we're using a green technology to extract the seaweed. They like that we're doing regenerative ag. This is a bit of a shift for me. I'm old school and I've come from some other industrial backgrounds, including the military. But there's a whole cadre of people in our company and in other seaweed companies that are doing it because it's the right thing to do. And this is on the sustainability side. It's right across the entire spectrum. Everything we do has a carbon price. We do a life cycle analysis of our carbon footprint and find ways of doing it with less negative impact as we to produce positive products. I'll give you one super quick vignette. We were returning from a farming mission, a planting mission, working in beautiful British Columbia on the coast. And we sort of did a quick detour into this beach. It was about a mile long, beautiful sand beach, gentle waves rolling in. And the next stop is Japan. I mean, it's the open ocean. And as we walked on the beach, there was some plastic waste, some bags had washed up and things like that. And I said, I was with three people in the aforementioned age group, 30 or 40. And I said, right, time to get back in the truck. Let's go. And they said, oh, no, we just got to clean up the beach first. And I was like, what do you mean? And they grabbed some bags and said, well, we got to clean up all this plastic. I know it's not going to make a huge difference, but it's the right difference. And we spent an extra hour cleaning up the beach before we got back in the truck to do our mission. And for our company to succeed, this kind of sustainability, triple bottom line, however you want to call it, has to be imbued in everybody from the top to the bottom. And we're very fortunate at Cascadia Seaweed with our Indigenous partners and our community partners, the government support, that this kind of doing the sustainable thing is truly built into what we do.
That is fantastic. And, one of the arguments that I have is doing the sustainable thing is actually good business sense. It just makes sense. When you break it down to its parts of what you're actually trying to do to become circular or sustainable, it's business 101. You're eliminating waste, and creating efficiencies, et cetera. And preserving your source of raw materials and making sure that is sustainable in the true sense of or definition of the word sustainable.
Yep, absolutely. Right? And it's the industry and the sector and the approach to the sector that we've all chosen to do. And there's, I took a swipe at carbon-based or petrochemicals. We need them. There's so much to do. I mean, we need a lot of things. The goal is to use as much as we can that has less impact, or to reduce the impact. Do we drive trucks that use diesel and gasoline to get to a farm? Sure we do. But where possible, folks carpool or we have slightly more efficient means. It's a lot of small steps to get to where we need to get as a society.
Yeah, you don't have to completely cut your own hamstring in order to do your mission. You can make small steps forward and move forward. And even those oil companies, big oils, are doing that
Yep.
in many of their different areas, building, green energy, et cetera, and alternative energy anyways,
Yep. We have
that
to
hopefully is greener.
we have to collaborate, and that's one of the things. Another things, Cascadia Seaweed, we try to be highly collaborative, and when new folks want to enter the seaweed cultivation space, we try as best we can. There's some great not-for-profits out there. Green Wave, based in Canada and the U.S., is doing fantastic work, and other seaweed companies around North America, Atlantic Sea Farms on the East Coast, even Acadian, which one could argue is competitors because they're the 41-year large player in it. We collaborate and discuss things as much as we can. We're all on the same mission, and specifically in our case, regenerative ag, and the same thing with other seaweed input companies. They're not out. They're out to help farmers do more with less.
Yeah. Now you hit on petrochemicals and plastics, et cetera, and you talked about that early on, that seaweed can be used for that type of stuff. Is that something you guys are actively trying to work on, or was that just a passing mention that bioplastics are a thing that people are working on?
Well, bioplastics are a thing, and maybe one of the leading companies in the world now is out of the UK called Notpla. And then there's also Sway in the US and Lollyware doing straws and things like that. Their success is based upon some good science and affordable biomass. That is to say, they can get seaweed at a price that's comparable to plastics. We're not in that space. When you start a small business, we have 20 folks, been in business 6 years. When you start a business, you better focus, because if you chase too many verticals, you'll fail at them all. And we were in two. We were in food and ag inputs, and we decided not to do food. So we had to focus. So we're aware of the bioplastics companies. We have dialogues with them. We always exchange notes on what's the specific chemical composition of our seaweed, how much would it cost to supply to them, and we support each other's efforts. But beyond that, we are not in that market at all.
So you're not developing bioplastics or moving into that type of stuff.
No,
okay,
right now we're focused on biostimulants and bovine feed supplements, as well as something called nature-based solutions. So because we're very good at understanding the ocean and understanding seaweed, we have a consulting business where we help other folks, particularly in the developing South, to grow seaweed. So we have a project in Kenya through Plan International and the outreach arm of the Canadian government, working with Kenyan female seaweed farmers to help them to better improve their outcomes with seaweed and better products. Right now, the seaweed in Kenya is growing and then accumulated, and it's sort of sold upstream, and the value leaves the villages. We're working with them to help understand how to extract better value and keep products in the communities, and working with women in the developing South. And this is a great adjunct to what we do. It's not our prime business, but if you're one of the best ocean cultivators of seaweed around, who better to help others?
Well, yeah, and then because the sustainability and what we're a rising tide lifts all boats, et cetera. And as we move down this path, and it gains more and more steam of doing the right things and producing things, like you said before, we don't need more products, just better products or better materials than we have right now. Not more, just better, redesign it better. Being able to adjust the scales of have and have-nots, and have a social impact on that and a lifestyle impact on that is obviously something that we can garner and build into this new circularity of our products and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all companies, big and small, have they have to be profitable to stay in business, to pay their employees, to invest in R&D, and to grow. But there also has to be the third component, the social compact. In my day, it was called triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. There's more stronger versions of ESG and UN Sustainable Development Goals that has teased out more specificity. But I always go the three things. We've got to reverse it though. Profit should be last. It has to be there. but it's the people and the planet, and you're not going to get to the planet without the people. So my own style at Cascadia Seaweed, I don't manage people, I lead them. I try and set a positive example and work on the people first, and then the people will work on the planet, and then if you do it right, then you can make profit.
Then you can make profit. Well, it's excellent, and I love that people planet profit. It reminds me of, and we get a little philosophical here in what it means to have a business, and when you're building a business, and you started this business 6 years ago, and you came from other businesses. When I left what I was doing in logistics to do this and Ocean Plastic Technologies, which is the company that I started and I'm trying to build, it was this essay I had to write to get into business school, which was based on Alfred North Whitehead. And he said that a society is only as great as the importance its men and women of business place on their contributions to that society. And I think if we focus, isn't that the focus of sustainability really, when you get down to it, is to if your business is just there to produce profit, that's not good enough.
No,
right?
And let's just take the word sustainability off its altar or the stage and just look at the word sustain. So we don't think sustain is good enough, because sustain means almost status quo, and the status quo right now is not very good. So this is why we talk about regenerative, but we actually cannot sustain not only can we not sustain what we're doing, we got to back up that truck a bit. So it's essential, and we've got to reduce our impact on the planet, certainly on the ocean in our case. We ourselves have to do more with less. And I'll give you an example, and it comes under the innovation category. In the first year, it took us about 5 days to seed 2 acres. We had a rowboat and a little fishing boat, and it took us 5 days to seed 1 acre. Today, with fewer people, we can seed 10 acres in a day. So instead of 1 acre in 5 days, it's 5 acres in 1 day, and the team has learned to do more with less. They've done it smarter. They've done it with more innovation. And we've got to do this across the entire supply chain. Some of the big box brand name shipping companies, and I won't use any names, they're trying to reduce their packaging. What used to come in 3 layers of boxes and plastic and things now comes in a pouch, recyclable plastic. And we've all got to do all of this stuff. Keurig coffee pods, find the recyclable versions of them. And another one of my sayings is everything in moderation, including moderation. And that means you don't want to sort of drive the horse in the ground while you're trying to get A to B. We got to take these measurable, incremental improvements. And this is what we're doing as a company. We're trying to get a little bit better every day, which means a little bit more profit, a little bit more planet, and a little bit more people. Now, of course, it's all wrapped in a very strategic corporate goal and one-page plan and quarterly board meetings. It's very corporate and it's structured, but in small steps. And I've just got to take a second for a shameless plug. We just landed our Series A investment of $4 million. We announced it yesterday.
Oh, fantastic.
One of our investors, for example, is the World Wildlife Fund of the U.S., and they've got a very strong environmental commitment to put to improve the planet, improve the habitats for wildlife, improve coastal communities. And it was an incredible vote of confidence that we have big name players like that helping our mission, both from a corporate perspective and from an ecosystem and biological perspective.
That is fantastic stuff. Listen, Michael, I loved learning about this, and I'm sure the people listening have as well. Well, first of all, do you have anything, you've said so much. Do you have a something you want to leave the audience with, and then how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, what I should have said is God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we talk. But it is a podcast, and I'm the guest, so I take.
No, you should be talking. That's what I wanted you to do.
So
That was it.
Liberty.
Everybody else has got the ears and they're listening. So you know what is there? I mean, you've given us a lot of great things to think about, and I love what you guys are doing. So is there anything left in that tank that you want to that you want to
go to our website, www.cascadiaseaweed.com. Cascadia is named after the region where we are, the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, British Columbia's the Cascadia region. So cascadiaseaweed.com. There's a great story there on our First Nations Indigenous partners, our products, more importantly, our people, lots of great YouTube videos on how we got where we are. And there's a lot of interest across North America, in Europe as well, but I'll only speak about North America for growing seaweed, using seaweed, and again, just in general, finding better ways of doing more with less. And that's what the farmer wants. He wants to get more output with less input. And seaweed farmers want to get more output with less input. And I think that's exactly what we've got to do as a society across everything we do. And Cascadia Seaweed is proud and happy to be part of that mission.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. Everybody, thank you for tuning in and downloading the Sustainiacs. Until next time, peace and love.